Welcome back to Pro Cycling Manager 2024. My name is Benji, and today we're going to talk about the new features of Pro Cycling Manager 2024 and why I have a problem with them. Now, Pro Cycling Manager is a lot like other sports or sports management games like FIFA, Football Manager, or FIFA Manager back in the day, where every single year there wouldn't be that many new features in the game. So yeah, just like previous years, the 2024 edition of Pro Cycling Manager didn't exactly deliver 70 new features, it was about 5. Now personally, I play PCM for the career mode, so I'm very happy to see that most of the new features are in career mode this year. Starting off with, in my opinion, the flagship feature of PCM 2024, which is the revamped sponsor and race objective system. Just like in real life, major teams can now have multiple sponsors like Visma and Lisa Bike, and each of those sponsors have different important regions and important races, which then affect your race objectives. Because on the race objective page, you then have on the left a list of the races with also the interest of each sponsor in that race. So for example, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, there's a 3-star interest from Visma, but a 4-star interest from Lisa Bike. Meanwhile, at the Tour de France, both sponsors are equally fully interested. Now on the right side, you can see that I need to abide by a few rules when setting up my race objectives. For example, in each period of the year, so quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4, I need to have at least 1 or 2 races specified as a race objective. On the right side, we also have points and difficulty, which incentivizes me to select races that are important and more difficult, because first of all, the points. For example, I spent 1 point on the Ronde van Vlaanderen, 3 on the Giro and 3 on the Tour, and 1 point on Lombardia. I needed to spend between 6 and 10 points. I spent 8, for example. And when it comes to difficulty, the harder the objectives that I choose, the more happy my sponsors will be at the end of the season if I achieve those goals. We can see that difficulty on the right of each goal right here, but also the average of that difficulty, which defines the amount of happiness your sponsor will have, on the right. Next to that, the game developers also implemented one of my feature requests, which is season objectives, and I like that, having an objective across a season like win X amount of World Tour races, finish in the top X of the World Team ranking. I love that. Now this feature, the prospecting page, this is a great feature. We had the addition of visibility in PCM 2024, so basically if you go in breakaways or have good results, you get a visibility score at a race, and this influences this page. Basically, in short, if you are in the final year of your sponsor contract, the visibility in races will influence how easy it is to find sponsors throughout the season. And that is an amazing feature. So honestly, first impressions, these are both great features. The sponsor system with multiple sponsors and the race objectives being completely redesigned, but there are a few things that are missing now. Let's think about the question, what influences the happiness of my sponsor in this game? It is the race objectives. If I achieve a race objective, they're happy. But while implementing this system, the developers forgot about 2 features which I loved a lot in the past. For example, your sponsor happiness was also influenced by races that was not a sponsor objective. So if, for example, the Vuelta, which is currently not on my race objectives with Visma Lisa Bike, well, if I win that Vuelta, my sponsor should still be happy that I won a race of the caliber of the Vuelta, even if that is not a race objective. And that's not the only one, because in previous Pro Cycling Manager games, the happiness of your sponsor was also influenced by the consistency of your team. For example, do you have X amount of riders from the region that your sponsor is from? Do you have a known rider from that region? Those features are also gone. Basically, my point is, whenever Pro Cycling Manager revamps or implements a new feature, I feel like old features go missing or disappear, and I don't like that. And that is not the only new feature of Pro Cycling Manager 2024 that led to the removal of another feature. For example, I am in a race right now, a random stage of the Giro riding with Groupama FDJ. I enter spacebar, and I see a well-designed new information screen. For example, it's on the right side of the screen. On the left, we now have the race. On the right, we see the profile, the groups at the bottom. But the problem is, when there's a KWM point or a sprint, let me show you. Bettiol wins the KWM, we've got Milesi in second, and third we have Rudy Mollard, for example. So that's our top 3 when it comes to this KWM point. From my experience, a lot of the time when it comes to intermediate sprints and KWM points, there's basically a photo finish. And when that situation happened, I opened spacebar again, and I was able to see in this screen who was the first, the second, and the third at the KWM point and the intermediate sprint, and that's not possible anymore. So in revamping the screen, they forgot that. So I feel like with every Pro Cycling Manager, there's a few new features that lead to other features disappearing, and for me that's an issue. Especially when in the past of Pro Cycling Manager, there's numerous occasions where a feature disappears and then 5-6 years later, a feature returns as the new flagship feature of Pro Cycling Manager, but it was in the game 10 years ago. For example, the morale screen was in PCM 2006, but in 2021, it was the flagship feature of the new game. How can something be a flagship feature of a new edition of the game when it was in the game 15 years ago? Or in terms of the scouting feature, 16 years ago, because scouting was in Pro Cycling Manager 2006, but in PCM 2022, it was the flagship new feature. Honestly, it is just frustrating to see that in Pro Cycling Manager over the last 20 years, features disappear and then return as this big new thing, but reality is, it was in the game 10 years ago. Especially for a sports management game like Pro Cycling Manager, where every single edition that comes out every year is basically the previous game, but with 5 new features. Yes, there's been a change when it comes to the AI when sprinting. There's supposed to be no blocking, as in the developers took away the collision boxes of the riders so that in the last 5 kilometers of the stage, there's no blocking. But now there's also a bug in every single high-speed sprint that if I have a, let's say, 4-rider train, the first rider of the 4 does effort cursor 99, maybe the second one as well, but my lead out in the past would always use sprint to get up to speed, not effort cursor 99, and then I would launch my sprinter from the wheel of my lead out who's already sprinting. Now, in PCM 2024, if your lead out is sprinting at a high-speed sprint and your sprinter launches from behind that, it's as if he loses momentum before he starts getting up to speed. So he drops off the wheel of your lead out and then eventually in the last 300 meters maybe comes to the same spot of your lead out. So it's impossible to really sprint properly with that mechanic. So I'm now trying to figure out, should I do effort cursor 99 with my lead out? But oh man, it's so frustrating. Anyway, all my frustrations aside, there's also some light points. For example, the facilities feature is a goddamn good feature. On this page, I can invest in rider-specific or team-wide investments for my team, and let's talk about the rider-specific ones first. High-performance tires, 2K per rider, and it actually improves the stats of my rider for a year. 0.2 on primary attributes, so not too much, but it's an upgrade. Next one we have wind tunnel for 20k per rider, so rather expensive, but it gives +2 on time trial and prologue stats for a whole career. That's crazy. Made to measure TT skin suits, 2k per rider for 0.7 time trial and prologue stats. By the way, when it comes to the whole career, I think this also goes over to new teams. So if I apply this on Jonas Vingegaard, if he leaves for UAE Team Emirates, for example, he will keep that upgrade, I think. We also have made to measure molded handlebars, 10k per rider for +1 on time trial and prologue attributes, but this one is for 2 seasons but is lost if the rider leaves the team, so that's one condition there. And lastly, TT training bikes, +1 on race day condition for time trial stages. So that's not a stat upgrade, but a race day condition upgrade that indirectly gives a stat upgrade on the day. Now, for example, let's apply that one, TT training bikes, on every single one of my riders. There we go. On the right bottom, I click buy, and now we see in the investments of every rider that they all have this upgrade. But now we also have team-wide investments, so I can do this. Materials Cobblestone Classics, +2 on Cobblestone attributes for my whole team for 30k. Next up, optimization chain processing, +0.1 on mountain, medium mountain, hill, sprint, cobble, time trial, and flat. So the primary attributes for 20k. We've got an upgrade to that. Optimization chain processing 2 for 50k. That's 0.2 on those stats. And lastly, optimization ceramic bearing. So 40k for a 0.1 upgrade. Applying that is just clicking on the upgrade and clicking buy on the right bottom. Now, I do want to talk about the finances of this, because on the right side we see the financial projections. It's missing one thing where it starts, and that is every month I get 1.2 million from Visma and Lisa Bike combined from my sponsors. After that, my rider salaries go off that, my staff salaries, and my U23 rider salaries, which leads me to I get 85 left at the end of the month after all my costs that will be added to my balance. But to be honest, even this whole financial projection, I think the game is showing the wrong thing. Basically, the balance available on the right is my monthly profit. I need to know my money in the bank when investing. So I think the balance on the left bottom should be the one that is shown on the right in the first place. Now, at first thought, I was thinking, okay, at a continental team, I can barely afford anything on this page, and that's the case. But when it comes to a World Tour team like Visma Lease Bike, I can probably do everything. So let's select everything. It will cost me 918 plus 80k in total. I will buy that, and I've still got 41k left in the bank at the end of the day. So when you start a World Tour career mode, you basically just spend all the balance you have in the bank on any investment you can and get started like that, because you can afford it anyway. Because while I have 41k in the bank at the moment, on the right you can see I will gain 85k every month anyway, so it's not like I'll go into debt or anything. So in general, my conclusion when it comes to the facilities feature is that I think it's a very good feature, very well designed. It accurately represents the difference between rich and more poorer teams in World Tour and below, and I think that's a nice addition to the game to have that dynamic included. Now, one new feature I haven't spoken about is the Strade Bianche like wide roads. They now actually have an effect, so they act kind of like cobbles where your riders get more tired over them. It's easier to split the group on hilly gravel segments, that kind of vibe. And in addition to that, the cobble and downhill stats now matter as a bit of a technique attribute for those races. Obviously, I think that's a good thing, but I did have some side effects where I found it too easy to split the group. For example, on a very steep hill and then very steep downhill on a gravel segment in Strade Bianche, I could literally ride away with my own team. So that's something that needs to be more balanced, but outside of that, I like that feature. Anyway, I'm sorry that this video turned into a bit of a rant about Pro Cycling Manager features, but I wanted to give my opinion on the new features of the game, how they have evolved over the last 20 years, and in addition to that, that I personally think some of them have problems while others are pretty great. Most importantly, I want to hear your opinion on what I said on the features in the comment section below. Drop your takes below, I want to see them. As always, thank you very much for watching today's video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.